Hey, hi, howdy, and hello. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Argue, where I shamelessly rip off Anthony Fantano and ask for you, the viewers, to submit your hottest takes, and then I respond to them. If you want to be in our next video, you gotta subscribe, go to the community tab, and then enter in your hot take whenever you see the next community post asking for them. Here's my hot take. You're a fake Godzilla fan. Why? You only start posting about Godzilla when Minus One come out. If anyone no believe, they can check your uploads. Also, Godzilla x Kong not even in your top 10 movies of year. Kinda weird for someone who say they big Godzilla fan, plus you know like Hedorah Horror of the Deep and you post too many videos about non-Godzilla stuff. This is a weird attitude that I've been seeing a lot of in the Godzilla community, not just towards me, but towards channels like Dangerville, where it's like, they're obviously a Godzilla fan. The idea that I just now started posting about Godzilla because of Minus One is insane. On this channel alone, I posted several videos before Minus One came out that were about Godzilla. And on top of that too, when I was in middle school, I was posting Godzilla reviews on my very old channel that I refuse to talk about here.
Godzilla vs. King Kong is a very, I guess you could say, Godzilla movie. It's also very fun to watch if you take all logic and reason and throw it out the door.
I even used to make clickbait videos where it's like, here's leaked screenshots of a concept art from Godzilla King of the Monsters before that movie even came out. I've been a lifelong Godzilla fan, and I'm not going to try and prove that to people because I don't need to. You can disagree with my opinions all you want, but to come at random people and say, you're not a Godzilla fan because you don't think exactly the way I do, it's just really immature and stupid. I get that the show is called Let's Argue, but it's like, come on, guys. Toho is being too controlling over the MonsterVerse with their Godzilla can't be a species thing and should just back off. Hard disagree. I recommend you check out my Godzilla fan films video where I talk a little bit more about why Toho is so controlling over their IP. And that's because Toho is a Japanese company and they exist in the Japanese copyright system, and Japanese copyright law is insane. Just ask any Nintendo fan. It's a war zone. It's not like America. So they need to be controlling over their IP or else they lose it. That's just how the law works there. So everything that they do, while you may disagree with it, has a valid reason, and I agree with what they have to do to keep the IP. It's also their IP in the first place, and I think that they're allowed to do whatever they want with it. So I don't have a problem with them being more controlling over the MonsterVerse. I mean, the reason why they're so controlling is because of Godzilla 1998 and how that pretty much stained the franchise for a number of years. They want to control Godzilla in film and how he's perceived because that's a big part of their brand. I tend to enjoy most, if not all, of the human stories in kaiju media. An example is that Son of Godzilla is my least favorite Godzilla movie, but the human story, especially Yoshio Tsuchiya, saves it for me. There are some quality human storylines in some of the Godzilla movies, so I agree with this person 100%. I'm writing my retrospective on Son of Godzilla right now, and one thing that I talk about in detail, in fact, I talk about it more than the actual monster stuff, is just how good the human plotline is. While the Showa movies get a bad rap for having bad human characters, I think a lot of it works really well, and only a few cases work to be extremely terrible. It just so happens that these characters exist in a movie about a giant monster, and a giant monster is just more interesting. Unless it's Godzilla Minus One or Godzilla Final Wars, because you're competing with a giant monster or a really good war story about a veteran coming home with PTSD and survivor's guilt, or you have mutants fighting giant crabs. The Toho Godzilla movies are irrelevant and boring compared to the MonsterVerse. Just look at the box office here in the US for Godzilla x Kong versus Minus One. People really only care about the MonsterVerse and that's it. I think it's a really weird way to look at movies by saying that a movie can be irrelevant. I think a movie is not like a sports team, where you say they're irrelevant now. A movie is a movie. Movies just kind of exist. They're made and then people talk about them or they don't talk about them, but that doesn't really reflect on the quality of the film. So to call a movie irrelevant or a film series irrelevant just comes off as really weird to me. Their main argument for this seems to be that the box office plays a factor in determining the quality of the movie or whether or not people actually care about a movie. And I have to say, no. For starters, Godzilla Minus One was in theaters here in a limited scope. It wasn't like Godzilla X Kong where it had a massive release, massive opening weekend. It stayed in theaters for a very long time. That wasn't Minus One. Minus One was in theaters for maybe 3 months, if I remember correctly. I remember December it was out here, and I think by like late January, maybe early February, it was gone. On top of that too, Minus One was released here in Japanese, and obviously there's a lot of people here who don't want to read subtitles for an hour and a half. That's not really a commentary on anything besides American audiences not liking subtitles. A bird just hit the window, holy shit. But I think it's disingenuous to say that people only care about the MonsterVerse, because that's just flat out not true. Just go to G-Fest and you will see a lot of love for the Toho movies, arguably more love for the Toho movies than the MonsterVerse. Godzilla Minus One did damage to the community, kinda. Mainly because of all the BS video essays that came out after the movie's release just clowning on the MonsterVerse. They also keep using the same dumb reasons as well. So yeah, Minus One did damage to the Godzilla fandom. Don't get me wrong, Minus One is amazing, but in my opinion, this is what I think. I disagree. A lot of the video essays that this person mentions were not made by Godzilla fans. The biggest video on this channel is me calling out one of those video essays that did this exact same thing. And that's because this person was not a Godzilla fan. They outright lied in their videos about Godzilla and tried to gatekeep Godzilla fans as well, despite not being one themselves. And the support around my video was pretty much unanimous. So I disagree in saying that Godzilla Minus One ruined the fandom because of the reaction to it. I think if anything, it united it. MonsterVerse fight scenes are not as rewatchable as Toho fights. No real desire to see them after first view because there's no randomness to them. Like in Godzilla vs. Biollante, you can see the real water dripping from Godzilla's fangs. Everything is planned. Here's the thing, I kind of agree and I kind of disagree. On one hand, I see what you're talking about. My eyes sort of just glaze over when I watch the fight scenes in Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire. Like, it is just a CGI fest, it's muddled and it looks god-awful. It's just constant zzzz noise the whole time. There's no real ups and downs and hills and valleys with the fight scenes. They're not dynamic. But then I think about Godzilla 2014. A movie where there is a lot to appreciate. You know, you talk about seeing the water dripping off Godzilla's fangs, but like, you kind of get stuff like that in Godzilla 2014. A good example would be when he decapitates the last Muto and you see part of its spine still like hanging out of its body and hitting the ground. Like, moments like that are incredible. This is one where I kind of agree and disagree at the same time. I'm sort of in the middle with you. Yes, there are a lot of bad Godzilla fight scenes in the MonsterVerse, but for an entirely different reason, there are bad Godzilla fight scenes in the Toho, Showa, Heisei, and Millennium movies as well. Godzilla 2014's criticisms of being hard to see only applies to the first Blu-ray transfer and streaming services which use that transfer. If you think the film was still too dark in the initial theatrical release or the 4K UHD release, then you just have poor eyesight. I completely agree. I, for the longest time, would complain that Godzilla 2014 was just too dark and muddied, and then I got the 4K Blu-ray and was blown away. I had just gotten a new TV. It has like a UHD thing, so it really brings out the detail, especially with 4K, because it is a 4K TV. And the amount of detail in that movie is crazy. I saw so many things that I hadn't seen before because I was just watching that garbage Blu-ray transfer. To anyone that does not like the Godzilla 2014 movie for that very reason, I highly recommend trying to find that 4K version, giving it a watch, because it elevates the movie tenfold. Godzilla vs. Hedorah is my favorite Godzilla film. I have never watched anything as wacky or insane in literally all ways. The music, the characters, the dub, the kaiju designs, the creative decisions, everything. It's an acid trip as a film, and I love it so much for giving me such a trip every single time I watch it. I agree 100%. The retrospective I'm writing about Godzilla vs. Hedorah is so in-depth, more than any of my other retrospectives. It's going to be much longer because I have so much more to say. It is a masterpiece of a movie, one of the best Godzilla movies ever made because of just how out there it is. The fact that Toho gave Yoshimitsu Banno the keys to the kingdom, and he proceeded to just make the weirdest movie anyone has ever made with a blockbuster like Godzilla, is crazy to me, and I respect it so much. Beyond it just being weird, it's also just a quality Godzilla story that adds a lot of horror back into the Showa era. I've seen a lot of horror takes on Godzilla use the idea of Godzilla's radiation having the ability to turn people into man-eating Godzilla zombies. I think this idea is pretty stupid, as Godzilla can be terrifying enough on his own without having a bunch of xenomorph-like henchmen running around and eating people. On a side note, a lot of people seem to want Noriko to become a Godzilla zombie in a hypothetical -1 sequel because of the G cells on her neck, and I honestly think that would ruin the movie for me. I agree completely. I do not like that aspect of Noriko becoming Biollante or a Godzilla zombie or whatever. It's lame, it's stupid. I hope the -1 sequel doesn't include any of those characters from -1 and we get like a clean slate, because those characters deserve their rest. They were great in -1, but they should be left in the past because, frankly, I want them to have nothing but the best because they are amazing. They are amazing characters. I'm sick of seeing them suffer. Ugh. Now, to your larger point, I think that a lot of that comes from Shin Godzilla and the hypothetical of what if Godzilla was able to evolve and those human Godzilla monsters like came off the tail at the end. Like, that's where a lot of that kind of comes from. And I think in hypothetical fan projects, it's fine. But in actual Godzilla licensed movies, I don't ever want to see that. Thank you so much to everyone that submitted their hot takes to the community post. Again, just reminding people, if you want your hot take to be mentioned in a video, it's in the community post whenever we post a new one. So the old one, like that's null. I've already recorded everything for it. So, if you respond to it, great. But like, I'm not going to bring it up in a video. You got to wait for the new ones to come out. Whenever you see it, comment, and it will be in the video if it's interesting to me or it's actually detailed. Don't just say, Godzilla X Kong is mid, and then that's it. Like, you need to actually say, I think X because Y and Z. Just be a little bit more detailed with your thoughts, and I'll include it. Don't write an essay also. I can't read out an entire essay for a video. I apologize for being a bit picky with this stuff. It's just, I want to make sure that there's topics in here that I could actually talk about in videos and have something to say. Because if it's just too vague, I won't have anything to say. It'll just be like, yeah, I agree. And no one wants that for a whole video. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.